All right. Looks like everyone was pretty on time. So maybe people will roll in over the next couple of minutes here, but we'll go ahead and get started because we are just a couple minutes past the hour. Thank you all for joining us and taking the time today to learn more about custom terminology, Fathom's latest feature release. We're super excited for it. In this webinar today, we will be going through the new functionality, and we'll also be talking about how you can use custom terminology and the different scenarios in which it applies. Let's see, do have Q&A. Please send those through as they come up. We will be kind of talking through some of the background of custom terminology, how to use it both for nonprofits and other specific scenarios like industries or even different regions. As those questions come up as we're walking through those things, send them through. We've got a member of our team, Cecilia, who has graciously offered to answer your questions as they roll in. So don't be shy. We will also have some dedicated Q&A time toward the end of the webinar where we can go in and kind of tackle your questions more in depth or even walk through it in Fathom. So let us know. And without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So super pleased to have my co-host Kaylin here today with us. She will be taking us through what this all looks like in Fathom and how it works in the product. And you'll all get kind of a look behind the curtain there. If I do see some familiar names, and we actually have had a few more people roll in those few minutes. So it's perfect. You're in the right place. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Rowan. I head up marketing and partnerships for Fathom's US team. And super excited to kind of walk you through all this today. So first of all, what will we be covering in this webinar? This is kind of just our quick high-level agenda. Obviously, we'll be going into more depth on each of these points. But first, we'll give a little bit of an intro. What is Fathom? Where did we come from? Where do we fit in with the processes that you are using and the tech that you're using? We will go through why custom terminology. So custom terminology is kind of a new term. Try not to say the word term hundreds of times today. It's a feature name from Fathom. So we'll explain what it is, but we'll start by talking about why we built this, kind of feedback that we received, and where it sits in terms of using Fathom and hopefully making it even more functional and valuable for you. From there, I'll pass over to Kaylin, and she will take us through what this all looks like in Fathom. Like I said, kind of a look behind the curtain and walking you through where to find this functionality and how to use it, some high-level details on kind of how it functions and works within your Fathom account. And we'll also be going through an example of what the kind of output from Fathom looks like here. So one place that you'll see these terms show up, the most prominent place is going to be in your reporting. So financial statements, some other areas too, where you will see custom terminology flow through. So we'll show an example of that with a nonprofit report from Fathom, kind of go through what this could look like as you use it with your org. And then finally, as mentioned, we will have some dedicated time for Q&A toward the end of the webinar. So like I said, as questions come up, send them through or jot them down if it's something that you want to cover toward the end, but we'll have some dedicated time for that just to go through questions. I should also mention before we jump in to the intro of Fathom that we will be sending a recording of this webinar out to everyone who registered. So I know we always get good questions about that, and we'll be going through some stuff that hopefully you'll want to be reviewing later. So don't worry, you will get a recording. We'll be sending that out within the next 24 hours or so after this webinar. If you have to head out early, or if you know a colleague who is joining late or something like that, they'll be able to catch the whole thing in that recording. All right. And with that being said, I think that's my last little call out. What is Fathom? So some of you are probably super familiar, and some of you maybe are seeing us for the very first time or have heard of us from your peers or colleagues. So Fathom transforms your accounting data into insightful dashboards and reports to help you answer critical business questions and plan for your future. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's probably the most succinct way to cover all of these different kind of pillars of Fathom's functionality. So I think of it as a toolkit. There might be scenarios, clients you're working with, or even a particular season for your own business where you're using parts of Fathom more than others. Essentially, what we cover is business analysis, reporting, so your financial statement reporting and other super visual kinds of reporting, forecasting, planning ahead, planning for the future, staying prepared for the future, consolidation, so multi-entity combinations of companies and different ways to slice and dice the data there, and also benchmarking. So being able to see where your different companies stack up and how they compare to each other in a group setting. So that essentially covers it. Of course, yeah, there's a lot more in there. We could probably do hours just doing the full Fathom demo of each of these little sections. But that gives you an overview. If you have any questions on our functionality generally or what else we cover, let us know. And we're happy to get in touch after this webinar too, if you need a little more information. So now where does custom terminology fit in? So we really built this feature. Over the years, at least in my time at Fathom, I've been here for about 5 years, and I can confidently say through those times, we've gotten feedback from particularly nonprofits, but other kinds of organizations too, that do not want to use the for-profit terminology on their financial statements and reporting. So they might need to use a different word that is not profit, for instance. So this is kind of the primary use case for this functionality, being able to override those default for-profit terms on a financial statement. This functionality is going to allow you to override those terms and also create your own and be super flexible with the way that the terms, I'm already doing it, the terms you're using, as well as the spelling, little details that either are appropriate for nonprofit reporting. Like I said, that's going to be kind of our strongest example that we'll keep pointing to, but could also be totally applicable if you just have a unique organization and you all just want to use different terminology on your financial statements. So could be a preference, could be a regulatory body is requiring a certain kind of reporting, like GAAP compliant reporting, for instance. We'll go through kind of some nuance there, but essentially this functionality allows you the flexibility to customize, as the name implies, the terms on your financial statements, and it will also flow through to some other areas of Fathom. Great segue here. Perfect. So yeah, those terms will come through. We'll show you what they look like coming through to financial statements. That's kind of the most prominent place where you'll see those terms change. And also the feedback that we have received has really driven that. So being able to produce a report and show it to your investors or your board, or just work with your client in a language that makes most sense for that business in particular. You'll also see these terms will flow through to KPIs. So we'll show you kind of what that looks like. But of course, if you're not using a term like profit or revenue, then it would feel a little disjointed to have your core KPIs using those terms. So there will be some automatic places where these flow through to kind of turn your whole company as it exists in Fathom into the results showing in the terms that make most sense for you. All right. And with that being said, I will pass over to Kaylin to take us through what this looks like in Fathom. And yeah, I'll let her take it from here.
Thank you, Rowan. Okay, so before we jump into the product, I do want to give a little bit of background. We are looking at a demo nonprofit company today. As Rowan mentioned, a lot of our feedback was specifically around nonprofit reporting and the terms that they use. And so we are exploring a demo nonprofit company. However, you can have it's very flexible. You can have terms for different industries, and I will show you all of that once we jump into the product. But the demo company that we're looking at is a cat sanctuary based in Seattle. Their calendar year matches their financial year, so we will be looking at an annual report that we've built for them. Okay, and let me just go over to the Fathom product. So hopefully you can see that. For those of you who have not been in Fathom before, have not started a trial or anything like that, this is the My Companies page. So this is where you will load your companies into Fathom from QuickBooks, Xero, MYOB, or Excel. And then also actually under beta, we have Sage Business Cloud. So look out for that. Just wanted to mention it. And then once you add your companies into Fathom, you'll see them here on the My Companies page where you can access the analysis, the reports, the forecast. In terms of custom terminology, you will be seeing that in the organization settings. And if you're watching me right now and my little speaker box is in the upper right corner of your screen, you may want to grab and drag it to the lower left corner, because to access the organization settings, you go to the upper right corner of your Fathom screen and you can access it from there. So these are the org settings. Only admin level users are able to access the organization settings. So only admin level users in the Fathom account will be able to create a custom terminology. However, other users will be able to use that custom terminology. Now, to go to custom terminologies, you go to terminology, and then you can see them right here. You can see we already have a couple custom terminologies there, but we also have these 3 predefined terminologies, and these are available for everyone. So the regular Fathom terminology that you're probably all used to would be English UK. And over the years, especially in the US, you can imagine how many times we've gotten asked, why is amortization spelled with an S instead of a Z? And the answer is because we are a company originally from Australia and they use UK English. So this is the regular Fathom spelling that you're used to. We now have an English US template as well. And that is, as well as changing the spelling, it is more GAAP friendly, as Rowan mentioned. So instead of profit and loss, it'll say statement of operations, I believe, and other things like that. And you can view any of these predefined terminologies, but you can also use them to create your own custom terminology as well. So here we have the not-for-profit. Again, this is available to everyone, but just as a little tip, you may want to create your own custom terminology from this one. And the reasoning for that is because, as I mentioned, we mostly use English UK spelling. So if we go down to depreciation and amortization, you can see it's still spelled with an S in this predefined terminology. So depreciation and amor. Am I spelling correctly? Tization. There we go. And that is essentially how it works. So when you create a custom terminology, you can see it's filled in a few things for us because we have created it from the not-for-profit predefined template. But any of these boxes, you can change the terms, and you can also change this one if you don't want to use income instead of revenue. And it's incredibly flexible in that way. So you can see the actual financial statement title, and then the different classifications, as well as a few of the financial totals like gross profit. Here it's switching to gross surplus / deficit because it's a not-for-profit. And if you create your own custom one, you can just give it its own name. You can see I can switch between the different financial statements. So on the balance sheet, we had statement of financial position. And then if you scroll down, you can see not everything is changing because not everything needs to be changed necessarily, but some terminology such as equity, a lot of nonprofits would prefer to use net assets or something similar. And then we also have the cash flow statement that you can change as well. So once you create that, you can just go ahead, create, and then that custom terminology will be available to you. I'm not going to do that just because I don't want to fill our demo organization with a bunch of different custom terminologies. But once you create one, it will show up here under the custom terminology section. And so then how do you use that custom terminology within a company or group in Fathom? I'm going to go over that. Before I do want to talk about up here organizational defaults. This is for any companies that are about to be imported into Fathom or getting imported, or groups that are getting created. So any new companies or groups in your Fathom account, this setting will not impact the companies or groups that are already in your Fathom account. And the way that it works is you can essentially choose one of the predefined or a custom terminology to set as the default for your entire Fathom organization. So you could choose English US as the default for your entire Fathom organization. You can also use auto detection. Auto detection is helpful because if you're importing from a cloud-based system, such as QuickBooks Online or Xero, then it will detect if it's a nonprofit company and it will automatically apply that not-for-profit predefined terminology set to that company. And then it will also detect where it's from. Well, it won't actually. It will base the English US or English UK off of your organization profile. So the address that you have here, our org is based in Australia, so it will use that English UK terminology. If it's not a nonprofit company, it will just automatically apply that. If this was US, then it would automatically apply English US for any companies that weren't nonprofit companies. So hopefully that makes sense. But I'm going to go back to the My Companies screen. If it will let me, there we go. Wasn't clicking it correctly. And now I'm going to apply it to a company. So as I mentioned, you have all of your companies and groups here. You can go into the settings for our Silver Cat Sanctuary here. And before I change the terminology, I'm just going to show you what it currently looks like. So you can see right now in our chart of accounts, we have profit and loss, we have balance sheet, and we have revenue. Now, if I go to the company profile, I have this new terminology option here. And so I can just change it here to not-for-profit, save those changes. And now when I return to the chart of accounts, I can see statement of activities and statement of financial position and income instead of revenue. So it takes that terminology and it flows throughout the platform into analysis and reports as well. You'll see the terms changing. One other thing that I want to highlight here for nonprofits concerns restricted and unrestricted funds or equity, in this case, net assets. If you have them in separate accounts, like you have a few accounts where there are restricted funds and you have a few accounts where they're unrestricted, then you can easily create a heading in your chart of accounts to sort of split them up. However, if you are using divisions such as QuickBooks Online, these would be classes, or in Xero, these would be tracking categories. We do see a lot of people have a division with the unrestricted funds and a division with the restricted funds. You can bring those divisions into Fathom and show a financial statement by division. So they'll be in different columns if you're setting it up that way. It entirely depends on how you have it set up in your source accounting system. But that is essentially how you separate out those funds. Okay, so just as a recap, we created the custom terminology, or you can create a custom terminology in the organization settings, and then you apply it to the company in the company profile. Now let's go ahead and see what this looks like in an actual Fathom report. Okay, so here we have our annual report. And I'm just going to go ahead and click edit. Awesome. So at the top of the report, I have added the logo for the nonprofit organization just to tailor it a little bit to them. And you can also see that I have a PDF version with a picture of a cat. For the online version, I simply chose to have a blank background, but I could fill it with an image if I want to sort of match the print version. So that is available as an option for you. But to start off the report, we have some text just to give some background. Obviously, nonprofits, while they are focused on the financials in order to stay afloat, they do have a mission that they want to complete. So we have the mission for the nonprofit. We have a little bit of a note from the chair of the board as well. And we are focusing on how they're doing in their mission and all of that at the top of the report. So we've brought in this information from Excel or Google Sheets. You can have non-financial information brought into Fathom, and we're able to reference it in the report using what we call placeholder text. So I just use the icon, and then I can grab any KPIs, any sort of chart accounts, line items, anything like that. And that also helps limit you going back and forth looking at the financial statement and then typing in the number. You can just grab the number essentially that way. So that's the beginning of our report. Next, we're getting into a few key numbers. These are specific charts that we have. So you can add charts from over here if you haven't built a report in Fathom. This would be a sort of key number chart. And again, you can see that we have revenue switched to income here. We don't have it up here just because these are the different types of charts available in Fathom. But when you bring the chart into your report, it will have income instead of revenue. And we have a few CAT stats. Again, nonprofits do like to focus on how they are doing in their mission. And then we also have a few other statistics, but going a little bit more in the financial direction. So we have the number of volunteers and the growth rate, but then we have the number of monthly donors. So the amount of people that are part of their monthly donor contribution program where they give a certain amount each month. And we have the average monthly donation as well. And these are all custom KPIs that we've created, either custom non-financial KPIs or a custom formula KPI. And you can do all of that in the settings. If you have any questions on that, go ahead and ask them. Under that, we have placed another text box. Text you can just grab up here, grab and drag it into the report, just to let us know that the monthly donations from that donation program are all unrestricted funds. Nonprofits often have to have little notes like this throughout the report, so you are able to do that. Next, we're focusing on the statement of activities. So we have a donut chart looking at the income mix. Where is our income coming from? For this nonprofit, the majority of income is coming from donations. That's what we can see. And so then next to that, we have another donut chart focusing specifically on the donation mix, where the majority of those donations coming from. There's a Give Big program. There's just regular donations, donations in kind, workplace matching, that sort of thing. And you can edit all of these sorts of charts. You can have a pie instead of a donut. I personally prefer the look of this. Other people call it a bagel. But yeah, you can hide the legend, show the legend, have white space between segments. You have a lot of different editing options. I do like to highlight that because a lot of people will go to the charts, they'll bring a chart into the report, and then they'll think, okay, that's it, but you can edit it beyond that. Next, we have our statement of activities, otherwise known typically as the profit and loss in Fathom, but of course we've changed the terminology. And here, nonprofits are often comparing to budget. They often have to. So we've done that. To do that, you just edit it. You go to the columns section. You can add or remove columns. In this case, I have this financial year and the budget, this year versus budget, and then the previous 2 financial years. I can go ahead and I can add a column, another one to compare to the budget, but maybe the percentage and full year. And then I can just grab and I can drag that to where I want it to be and save those changes. So again, all of it's very easy to edit once you bring it into the report. I have another text box just letting us know where those grants are coming from. A continuation of the statement of activities. So above we were looking at income and the income mix. Now we're looking at expenses. We have the top 10 expense accounts. We have another donut chart because this nonprofit has a few different programs that they're focusing on. They have the clinic, they have the actual sanctuary, they have an outreach program, and then they have rescue. And so it's kind of like where are those expenses being split up and how. Here we can see operating surplus / deficit instead of operating profit, and a couple of charts on that. This one showing it compared to income and total expenses. This one just showing it compared to budget. And underneath this, we can see a note letting us know that this huge surplus is from the October gala that the nonprofit hosts every year. And about half of those gala funds are restricted because they're being flagged for a planned renovation project of the sanctuary. But also as part of that gala, of course, they like to have people sign up to the monthly donation program. And so those monthly donations are still unrestricted, even if they sign up during the gala. Next, we have our statement of financial position, and this is, of course, usually known as the balance sheet. I don't think I showed you, but you grab all of these from the tables and financial section right here. And you can go to financial trends to have like an entire year's worth as well. This is an annual report, so I just have the full year totals. But I am in this one comparing instead of to budget, I'm comparing to the previous year because that's another option. Again, you just edit those columns. And you can also edit the layout as well. So you can see we have a few different options here. After that, we have our statement of cash flows. Here's a great visual letting the nonprofit know that they are trending downward in terms of their cash position. I'm sure that's a situation a lot of nonprofits are in. But you can see this is throughout time for the nonprofit. We have the actual cash position, and then we have the rolling average as well. So just brought a chart in and I've edited it to show this. Underneath that, we have our statement of cash flows, just this year and the previous 2 years. And then finally, we have our final visualization, just like letting us know where the cash inflows and major outflows are for this nonprofit. And you can see even in this chart, we have changed the terminology. So this would typically say revenue, that says income. And then down here we have, let's see, where can I find it? Net assets instead of equity. So those terms do show up in a lot of different places, those changes throughout the platform in the analysis tools and in reports. This is our entire report. Once you are done with a report, you can publish it online or PDF. If you publish it online, I can go ahead and I can show you a preview of that. When you publish it online, you can invite your clients into Fathom or other stakeholders into Fathom, and you can edit their permission so that they can only see the published reports. One cool thing about an online report is that as you go through it, you can see there are some animations. That's one cool thing, but you can also leave comments. So somebody can ask a question and you can respond. There will be a little notification on your My Company screen so that you can go to that report and respond to those comments. But yeah, that's the online version. And then I can also just show you really quickly the PDF version. So our lovely cat at the top, you have the option to have a table of contents and some page numbers. And then, yeah, all of this is based off of what you did in the online screen. So let me go back here and I will go ahead and I will return to the My Companies page. Just a few things that I want to point out before I hand it back to Rowan. In the lower right portion of your screen, you can see we have our lovely chat. Our support team is 24/5. They are very responsive. They are incredibly helpful. We love them. We always get a lot of feedback that they are amazing. And so you can message them to ask a question. We also, of course, have our help center. We do have an article specifically on custom terminology. And let me just show you that. So you can access that here. There are a few different things, including you can see, let me find it if I can. Yes, here you can see a side-by-side comparison of the 3 predefined templates. So that English UK, English US, and not-for-profit, just if you want to be able to view them all at once, that is there for you as well. But feel free to reach out to us if you have any sort of questions like that, and I will return to Rowan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kaylin. There's a lot in there. We got some great questions from people throughout, going through each of those different areas. So if you are not in a Fathom account now where you can access this and start using it right away, we have a free 14-day trial. Going to our website or fathomhq.com/sign up, but you can't miss it if you go to fathomhq.com or even just Google us. You'll be able to start a trial. And once you kick that off, it's totally fully functional. So if someone asked about having kind of a demo environment where they could be the admin and the different permission levels for this functionality, kicking off a trial, it will be just the same as what your paid Fathom account would be like. Nothing is restricted in terms of access. So if you start the trial, you'll be an admin automatically, but you can also add users at different levels and kind of experiment with what that looks like too within that trial account. We also have great training resources and support resources for you. As Kaylin mentioned, our fantastic support team really, shines. We get great feedback all the time. They're Fathom experts, and we're totally here to help you through this and hold your hand, talk through some different specific scenarios. If you have one thing that you're looking to do specifically, and it might be kind of unique to your scenario, let us know. We're happy to explore that kind of thing with you. I know I saw a couple come through that, yeah, there are things that we should be able to do, and it just kind of depends how you're looking to show different data points and different terms. Once again, using that word. But we are here to help. We also have a super comprehensive help center. So as Kaylin showed in that little chat bubble, you can always find it there. That will be video walkthroughs, written guides. We try to have all the resources in different formats because we're all different kinds of learners, but it's just, yeah, a wide array of most things that we have ever gotten questions about. If you can't find an answer there, connect with us. You'll also find our support team in that little chat. And you can always shoot us an email too. We're totally happy to help. So with that being said, we'll jump into some questions. So we got a couple. I think I'll start here because we got a few questions on this kind of phrased in different ways. And Kaylin, you did show some of this. If you could just kind of refresh us on when you set a terminology, if I wanted to apply that to a group or a single company, or if one person asked about applying that to many different companies at once. Yeah, could you just take us through that step one more time, what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. No worries. So if you're applying it to a single company or a group, it looks very, very similar. So I can go into this company, for example, and I can go to the company profile under the settings, and I can apply it there. So this is where I can switch to potentially English US, and I just need to save those changes. This only affects this individual company. And that is one interesting thing. If you have a consolidated group, then you can also change the terminology for the group. The underlying companies, their terminology does not impact the group at all. So you can have them have different terminologies if you want to. Let me just find a consolidated group. Again, you go to the settings, and you will go to the group profile, and you will find that terminology there as well. And it's similar for a benchmark group. The only difference there is it's the first step in the benchmark group settings is where you change the terminology for that benchmark group. In terms of applying it to multiple companies in your account at once, if you have more than 50, like 50 companies that you want to change, reach out to our support team because we currently don't have this functionality, but we could potentially do it for you if we have enough dev resources. So I cannot promise, but potentially if you do have that many companies that you want to have changed over to a terminology, please just reach out to our support team via the messenger and we could potentially get that done for you. One other thing that I want to know, because Rowan was mentioning it in terms of the permissions and somebody asking about that, is so as I mentioned, the organization settings and creating custom terminologies are only available for admin level users. However, anybody with access to step 2 of a company profile can change the terminology for that company. So specifically, I'm sorry, I have trouble with that word, the company profile step of the settings. And you can really tailor user permissions like to that granularity. I will go ahead and show you that in user management. I'm going to go ahead and I will find somebody with lower permissions just so that I can change their advanced permissions. So you can see here are the advanced permissions. This person is a viewer or a client. You might see if you have an accountant org. An accountant or business org, it really just changes a couple terms in Fathom. But you can see under the advanced permissions, I can give this person access to the company profile specifically, or I could take it away to make sure that they aren't able to change the terminology. So you can get that granular with the advanced permissions, and the analysis tools are able to access. In terms of reports, I mentioned that maybe you only allow them to view published reports and you don't allow them to view anything else. You have the options to change all of this and really tailor it to the permissions level that you want for someone. So those are James's new permissions, and I will go back to my company's page for the next question.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's great background too. If you haven't played around with adding a user, if you're brand new to Fathom and trying this out, unlimited users on every Fathom account. And as Kaylin showed, you can get pretty darn granular with exactly what they are able to access, whether it's view or actual changes that they can make to things. So you can get really specific with those based on your scenario, whether your team is in there and you want them to be able to do everything, or if it's a client and you really just want them to be able to see their information and maybe just not change anything at all. Thank you, Kaylin. We just got another one and Cecilia addressed it. Thank you, Cecilia. It was a good question though, so I thought I would call it out. And it was just whether this functionality is live in the account or if there's anything that a user needs to do to activate this and be able to start accessing and using this functionality.
You don't need to do anything. It is live in Fathom. So if you are an admin level user, you should have access to the organization settings and you will be able to create a custom terminology. If you aren't an admin level user, then you could still potentially change the terminology in one of your companies that you have access to if you have access to that setting. And you could change it to like one of the predefines if you don't have any sort of custom template set up yet. But yeah, it's live for everyone.
Yeah. Hopefully after this, you'll just jump in and start using it. And yeah, we're always keen to hear your feedback too. So it is there. Nothing needs to happen on your end. Another question. Let's see, we've got a few here. KPIs. So we mentioned that terms flow through there. If I am someone who has been using Fathom for the last 6 months and I've created all these fantastic KPIs to use with my clients or with my own business, what does it look like? Do I need to go back and modify KPIs now that I have these new and different terms? Yeah, which ones might I need to? What should I keep in mind as a user in terms of those KPIs I've created already?
Yes. So the answer to that, the short answer is no, you don't need to do anything. I will give you a little bit more context to that answer. So for those of you who are less familiar with KPIs in Fathom, you can create them in the settings. We have over 50 default financial KPIs, and then you can also create your own custom KPIs, like a formula KPI, or as I mentioned, we have a lot of non-financial KPIs in this company, and you can import those results as well. So in terms of the KPIs that will change when you change your terminology, there are really only about 8 because we're only changing the default KPIs that, of course, everybody has. If you have a custom KPI, then you can name it whatever you want, and that's completely up to you. But a few examples would, of course, be total revenue would be changing. You'll notice it's not in the settings here, but it does change in the reports when I'm viewing it there in the analysis tools. But also gross profit margin, that will change to gross surplus deficit margin, I think, something like that. So a few of those default financial KPIs would be changing. If you've created a custom formula KPI and you've used like gross profit in that formula, don't worry. The mapping that the custom terminology does, it's all there. So it will use the same numbers. You don't have to change anything. Your custom formula KPI should be just fine. So yeah, no is the answer. You're all good to go.
Yeah, good answer on both of those. Nothing that is required of you as a user to, yeah, just have this kind of streamlined and start using it right away. A few other questions, but I think we'll do this one as our last one. And I think we actually answered all of the questions that came through, but if other questions come up too, let us know. We're totally happy to help, as mentioned, after this webinar. And our Help Center also has some pretty comprehensive details on custom terminology. So check that out too. You'll likely find what you're looking for there, unless it's a total one-off, but those are fun ones for us to dig into with you. So let us know if that's the case. And the last one, I just wanted to, we mentioned this a little bit, but I thought it was worth coming back to. Does custom terminology mean that my reports are GAAP compliant, let's say, since we're in the US here? All kinds of different regulatory groups, but since this functionality is in here, yeah, what does that mean to make my reports compliant?
Yes. So Fathom is for management reporting. We do not promise statutory reporting. However, the English US terminology is more GAAP friendly for sure. So just viewing it, you can see profit and loss becomes statement of operations instead of cost of sales. We have COGS. You can see that pesky S is now a Z right here. So that is what is happening for that terminology set. But also, just because I know that it has come up before, in terms of the balance sheet, I cannot remember which is which, but I know IFRS and GAAP, one prefers non-current before current, and then the other one is the other way around. Again, I cannot remember which one is which at this moment, but the point is you can change the balance sheet layout. So let me go ahead and I will just create a new section. This is a demo report, so there's lots going on in here. But I can add oh, yes. Yes, I changed this to US terms. I was trying to remember. Oh, let me see. Let me go back to the very, very top and change this to a different date. Hopefully one with data.
Yeah, your data, you guys will have real companies.
Yeah, don't worry about that. You should
They'll
have
always
data.
show.
But you can see, okay, now I have my statement of financial position. And in the rows section, I can change the layout. So current before non-current is an option, but so is non-current before current. You do have the ability to change those layouts slightly. So wanted to point that out because I know that IFRS and GAAP have a slightly different standard there. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, great call out. So yeah, really this feature is just adding a whole kind of new dimension to functional or customization rather in Fathom. You'll find that customization throughout Fathom, and that's kind of been core to the way that our product has grown and evolved over the years. But this is really a great example of kind of putting it in your hands as the user, whatever terms you need, or as Kaylin mentioned, even spelling, making it really appropriate for your audience, whether that's S's and Z's or even using different language for your terms. It's all possible now in Fathom. So you should be able to meet those different compliance standards and regulatory requirements with this more robust customization functionality, essentially. Great questions. Thank you so much for sending through your questions and feedback throughout the webinar. Always way more fun when our audience is engaged and we can go back and forth and not just talk at you and into the void. So appreciate you all. And thank you again for taking the time and joining us. As a reminder, we will be sending out the recording of this session. If there's anything that you missed or want to review, or even just to share with your team or others, you'll be able to do that. Then the next 24 hours or so, you'll get an email. So keep an eye out for that. It will also contain the sample report that Kaylin ran us through for the animal shelter. Silver Sanctuary, with that great example on there. So you'll be able to see not only financial statements and how does that come through, but different specialized KPIs for a business type and all of those things. I think we got questions on all angles there. And yeah, let's see. We may have just a couple more questions coming through. As I mentioned, if you do have questions, let us know and we're happy to jump on with you after this and make sure you've got all you need. But thank you once again. And thank you, Kaylin, for taking us through all of that. Yeah, there's a lot to cover in here, but our hope is really that it just expands how functional Fathom is for you, who you can use it with. The possibilities are now kind of totally open. The world is your oyster, essentially, in Fathom. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.